Welcome to the Third and Central podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to the University of Louisville's baseball program. This is Matt Sefcovic, and as always, I am joined by Aaron Turner. Aaron, I know it was a rough week for the Louisville baseball team, but I don't want that to overshadow what happened tonight when my man took Lutheran High onto a district championship after kind of struggling this season. Coming up in the postseason, your pitcher threw a complete game tonight, 2-0 win to win the district championship out your way. So before we get started, just huge congratulations, first year in coaching, and my man takes his team all the way to the district championship, and he's not done yet. He's ready to keep this thing rolling next week when they get started into the postseason even further. So huge shout out to Aaron and Lutheran High.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. The boys are rolling. Gotta love more baseball.
That's right. Yeah, more baseball is never a bad thing. It has been around here a little bit lately. We're going to dive into that a little bit, but I just can't let that moment pass you by because first year in coaching, taking your team all the way to the district championship and winning and continuing on the playoffs out there is a huge accomplishment. So congratulations to you and your squad, and keep that thing rolling next week as you all progress.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some baseball that's happened around here locally that won't be quite as exciting as what you've experienced with your high school team. Since we last talked, Louisville went 0-3. They got swept by North Carolina down in Chapel Hill. Midweek this week against Indiana was canceled, which was a big game because both teams really needed to get that game in. Louisville is currently at 61 in the RPI, and Indiana's at 58. So whoever won that game, that was going to be a pretty important resume building win deep in the season. So, I guess if you're going to be on the losing end of it, it's a good thing you didn't play. But the opportunity to win a big game at this point in the season, when some of the other teams are playing midweeks against lower competition, having that win or possibility of a win late in the season was big. So that the midweek was canceled. So after the losses to North Carolina, we're currently 29-22, 13-14 in conference play, which puts us at 5th in the Atlantic Division. We fell one spot after the sweep. So current standings: Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina State, Wake, Louisville, Notre Dame, and Boston College is at the bottom of the Atlantic Division. Like I said, Louisville currently sits at 61 in RPI, 33 in strength of schedule, which that number just continues to rise as the conference play progresses, like we said it would. But with an RPI of 61, I'm pretty concerned at this point in time. What are your thoughts of just kind of where we currently sit with a 61 and RPI, and what happened this week in North Carolina, which we'll dive into a little bit more, but just to start, what do you think about what went down this weekend in Chapel Hill?
It was obviously pretty disappointing. We talked at length about it last week. You had to at least win one. Would have loved to win the series, take 2 or 3, but you could not go down to Chapel Hill and get swept. And not only did we get swept, but we got swept in a pretty brutal and, it was very uninspiring baseball, to be honest. And after Indiana got rained out, I'm just like, okay, whatever. After what we just witnessed, I'm not really sure that I wanted to watch us play on Tuesday night. Just a lot of uninspiring baseball. That's the best way to put it. And, I'm not liking our chances right now. We talk about it at length about the importance of RPI, and whether that's something that you like or not. The fact of the matter is that RPI is king in college baseball, and when your RPI is sitting at 61 right now, and we're still not looking at that magic number of 15 ACC wins going into the final weekend, I'm really not liking where we're sitting.
And I'm glad you bring up the 15 wins, because I've been pretty consistent about that all year long, that I think if we get to 15 wins in this ACC, and what I mean by this ACC is the 2024 year, where the conference is as strong as it is, I've remained consistent with 15 wins probably gets you in, but if you look at the schedule, we've got 3 games with Notre Dame left. You win that series, if you just win 2 of them, you get to 15 wins. I don't think 2 wins over Notre Dame is going to jump or bump the RPI enough to support an at-large bid. So I guess that leads to a further discussion about, what does this team need to do to get to the conference or the NCAA tournament? In my opinion, I think now the magic number is kind of 4. I think if you can win 4 games the rest of the way, I would feel comfortable-ish. Whether that's a sweep of Notre Dame and a win in the ACC tournament, or better yet, I think if you win 2 against Notre Dame and then win 2 in the ACC tournament to progress onto pool play, I think that is probably best case scenario to support a bid. But at this point in time, what do you think we need to do to get into the tournament?
I like the idea of 4, but I think I might respectfully disagree with that and say that we have to make it out of pool play in the ACC tournament. And then there's no reason why we can't. I really do love our two-headed monster of Gongora and Webster going out there and starting those 2 games. But like I talked about last week, you don't want to be in a situation where your fate of an at-large bid is going to be determined by your results of the conference tournament. That is absolutely not where I wanted this team to be. I talked about it quite a bit last week, and now that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So kind of a complete 180 of where we thought this team was a few weeks ago.
So let's talk about the conference tournament. We both mentioned it a few times. Currently, Louisville is in Pool C, which puts them 10th out of 12 teams. In Pool C would be North Carolina State, Virginia, and Louisville. So to come out of the pool, Louisville would have to win both games. As the 3 seed of that conference, you have to win both games. So NC State is 15-11, Virginia is 15-12, Louisville's 13-14. Louisville swept NC State. They weren't full strength at that point in time. The Wolfpack weren't, but that was at this point in the season. That's Louisville's biggest series win, which is a massive win against a really good baseball team. And then Virginia, who Louisville lost the series to them. So that's obviously not going to stand. That's not going to be the pool that we get into, but those are the types of teams we're going to be playing. How do you feel if we are in a pool of, let's say, NC State and Virginia?
Hypothetically, if that really is how the tournament shakes out, we end up with those 2. Honestly, I think that is best case scenario for us. I think you and I talked about this after the NC State series. Yes, they weren't at full strength, but also I just don't think that they're that team this year. We obviously they've had a good year and they find themselves at the top of the pool. I still don't see it from the Wolfpack. I could be very wrong, but I just don't see it with that team. The game that would concern me obviously is Virginia. We got the crap kicked out of us by Virginia. That offense is incredibly dangerous. But come tournament time and an at-large bid is it's pretty much on the line. Never know what can happen.
And the other 3 1 seeds for their pools are Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State, who Louisville has not really fared well against either of those 3. Obviously, they got swept by North Carolina over the weekend and then won a game apiece against Clemson and Florida State. So, either way, we're going to be playing a team, the 1 seed in our bracket is pretty damn strong and probably somebody we've run into already this year. But I think you want to stay away from Wake Forest as much as possible because they're obviously very good and they've started to click lately. They they struggled a little bit in the middle of the season, but they're bouncing back at this point. You want to stay away from Clemson as much as you can. Same with North Carolina, Florida State. So I'm with you. I think our best option is somehow, if we can, getting paired up with NC State. We've shown that we can beat them. We've seen what that recipe looks like. It's just a matter of going out there and taking care of business, no matter who's in the other dugout, because we're going to have to win baseball games in the ACC tournament if this team is going to hear their name called by the selection committee.
You know, I really think it's a shame that we got to this point where we have to have this conversation about, what is it going to take down the stretch to get an at-large bid? Because when you look back on the schedule and the ACC games that we've played, you could just look at game after game. We're like, oh man, if this just went our way, or if we had done this, if we had done this, I think, if we did a lot of little things correct, that we'd be in a much different position than we are right now.
No, you're 100% spot on. You look at the series against Clemson, who's the number 4 team in the country. If we don't blow a 7-run lead on that Friday night and win that series against Clemson, we're having a different conversation right now. I think you lose a couple games early in the season. We started the season 0-4. That St. Bonaventure loss, they're 15-31. That's not a huge win, but it's a terrible loss. So if you win, games like that, you lost a game to Northwestern. I understand it's a lot to say, hey, you got to go out and sweep this team, but when they're 17-32, you got to go out and sweep this team. So there's just you can look up and down the schedule, and there's a handful of games that we were in and just couldn't find a way to win. So I think you're 100% correct when you say I didn't envision this is where we would be, but now here we are for the third time in 4 years talking about, is this team worthy of a tournament bid? And right now, this isn't you and I talking, this is the experts in their field talking. We are not. D1 baseball does not have Louisville listed in the field. Their projections came out on Wednesday. And then the Perfect Game, Baseball America released theirs and had Louisville in the first 4 out as the number 2 team in the first 4 out, right behind St. John's, ahead of LSU and Illinois. And as you pointed out before, St. John's, they just keep getting screwed by the selection committee after happening in basketball. So there's a weekend left in conference tournament left to play. But, St. John's they have found themselves right on the bubble like they did in basketball. But, this isn't just you and I saying, okay, we're disappointed with where we are. Wish we would have had a better season. No, this is everyone saying, hey, this team right now doesn't have a resume to support an at-large berth. So I don't know. I think the magic number is 4, but I think the best way to get that 4 is 2 Notre Dame and 2 in the tournament. But that's a tall ask. But I mean, if we want to play postseason baseball, that's what has to happen.
I mean, you said it best. We kind of put ourselves in this situation. We still have an opportunity it's in our hands. It's right there for the taking. At-large bid is definitely still very much on the table. And while we're talking about this, wanted to pivot to something that you mentioned, a couple minutes ago when you talk about the first 4 out. What the heck happened down in Baton Rouge this year that they're also in that mix? I think that just shows the craziness every year of college baseball that LSU finds themselves on the outside looking in too.
And you wonder, is there going to be a team like Ole Miss from a couple of years ago that is on the bubble and they find themselves winning the national championship? Is that something that LSU has in them? Because they've got all the talent in the world. That team is absolutely loaded. They clearly did something right in the portal because they've got guys transferring in from all over the place. Jay Johnson's got a hell of a squad down there in Baton Rouge, but the SEC is brutal this year. I mean, I watch a lot of college baseball and I gravitate to ACC and SEC just because it's, in my opinion, everyone's opinion, it's the 2 best conferences in the country. That's just a fact. And I watch a lot of LSU baseball, and there's a lot of talent on that team. But you can have a off year like that, but to have a stretch like Louisville's had of 3 of 4, if it were to come to fruition this year that they don't make the tournament, I think there's going to be some difficult conversations. And I don't think we're ready to have those 100% quite yet, because can this team get to the tournament? Yeah, I mean, there's a path to get there, right? But how clear is that path? Is it going to become a reality? If it doesn't, there are going to be some hard conversations. And you and I can sit behind a microphone and have these difficult discussions all day long, but those are conversations that the coaching staff and administration are going to have what the future looks like. We'll obviously voice our input when that time comes, if that time comes. But for now, this team just has to find a way to win 4 or 5 baseball games. And, there's a path to do that, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to beat a lot of really good baseball teams in order to do that.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and we talked about UNC a little bit. I want to go ahead and jump to that series. It was tough. It was a tough series to watch, because you said it earlier, how they played uninspiring baseball, which I think is a really, really good way, unfortunately, to describe it. They got run ruled 14-4. I think that was the third time Louisville had been run ruled in an ACC game in the last 4 series. So that's not something to put on your resume. Saturday they lost 6-4, a little bit more competitive game, and then Sunday they came out and lost 16-7. Sunday was a tough one. I watched more of Sunday than the rest of them, just because everything going on with Mother's Day and traveling all over the state. So I didn't get to watch all of every game, but I watched more of Sunday. Louisville fell behind in that one 11-0 after 4 innings. And I was like, we're going to go down here and get run ruled again. Like, we're well on our way. And then they battled back. They showed a little bit of life, scored 6 runs in the 5th, and then North Carolina does their thing and end up winning the game 16-7 on Sunday. So it was a rough weekend. Coach Dan McDonald missed Friday night. Kind of a weird game, weird situation. Roger Williams, that's where he played, pitching coach. It was kind of a homecoming for him. So he was the acting head coach with Dan missing. Corbin Dickerson made a pitching appearance late in the game. That was a little bit odd. We talked about that. Not 100% sure what went into that decision. But overall for the weekend, Louisville walked 32 batters and struck out 18. Anytime you play a top 10 team, I think North Carolina was ranked 11. So, anytime you play a top team in the country and you walk 32 batters in a 3-game span, you're not going to win the game. Like, you're not going to win the series. That's not a recipe to win a series against any team, let alone one of the best teams in the country. North Carolina belted 12 home runs over the weekend. That's, again, when you're walking 32 and giving up 12 home runs, it's tough to win games. One thing I thought was fascinating, Alex Alisea hit his first career home run. So shout out to him, because it's, he's like our Napchick. Not going to hit a lot of home runs, but when he does, just super exciting to see, somebody like that doesn't typically display a lot of power, but go out there and knock one over the fence. So shout out to him for hitting a home run over the weekend, because just big for him, but obviously he'd probably rather win the series and hit a home run, but it's a cool moment for him individually.
Yeah, super excited for Alisea. I think earlier in the season, I was noticing that he was getting a lot of lift on his baseballs. I was like, he's gonna get one before too long. I think you and I talked about that and set the over under for his career at like 4.5 or something crazy. So we got that one. But overall, though, just there's really not much left that needs to be said. Just like I said, uninspiring is the only word that really comes to mind. It was not a team that looked like we really wanted to be out there. We did not look like we belonged on the same field as the Tar Heels this weekend, and it certainly showed. The walking 32 and giving up 12 home runs is just an absurd number to me. There's something absolutely not right about that goes a lot deeper than what's going on the field, missing your pitches, that whatever it is, strategy, something needs to be addressed because statistics like those just cannot happen ever. Doesn't matter who you're playing, can never happen.
One thing that stood out to me, the Friday night game where Louisville got run ruled 14-4, North Carolina hit 7 home runs in the game, and Louisville had 8 total hits. So their home run total almost matched our hit total as a team, and that was just in 8 innings when the game ended due to run rule. So just you can look up and down the stat sheet, or if you watched any part of the game, you can tell there's a vast difference in the two teams that were out there on the field. You mentioned Gongora earlier and being confident in him, which I am. I think Sebastian, I have a lot of confidence in Sebastian, but we talked about this over the weekend a little bit. He's kind of in a rut right now, and we starting Thursday against Notre Dame, we really need him to find a way to get out of that. With an ERA in conference play at 7.77, and his last 3 outings, he's given up at least 5 earned runs. We really have to see him get that number down and go deeper into the game, because we've got to find a way to preserve the bullpen. When we're throwing well and getting deep into the games, we're having success because we do have Tucker Biven, who's been a really, really big bright spot for this team. He's stepped up in a major way this season. That the leap that he's taken from his freshman to sophomore year has just been massive for this team. If we didn't have Tucker pitching the way he's pitching this year, I don't know where this bullpen would be. But he can't throw every night. We're throwing him in games that we're in. We're throwing him at least twice every weekend, it seems, just because he's the only reliable option, or most reliable option, that we've got. So if we can get the starters to get deeper into games, and I know I feel like I preach this every week on the podcast, but it hasn't changed. It's the same thing. It's the same principle that we're looking for. So we need a big start from Sebastian, a big start from Evan Webster against Notre Dame to try to put ourselves in a way to compete and win this series.
I feel like you and I have talked about Gongora at length off the microphone too, and something that I've been saying the last few weeks are these major league scouts just have to be just drooling at the idea that Gongora is falling in the ranks a little bit down the draft board, and gonna grab him in, round 8 through 10 or whatever it may be, because all the stuff is there. He's big body, really big frame lefty who can just chuck smoke with great off speed. So once again, there's something that's not clicking with the pitching staff right now. And like we talked about earlier, there's going to be hard decisions and hard conversations that need to be had during the offseason. And I think that the pitching staff is going to be a key point of emphasis for the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think there has to be a lot of movement in the staff. And we'll jump into this whenever the season ends, whether it's this weekend, next weekend, 2 weekends, a month from now, whenever the season ends, we're going to dive into that. But you bring up a very real point, and that's something that's going to be very important in this offseason, is how we adjust going forward and what the staff looks like, who returns, who doesn't return. And with the transfer portal, you can change things with a drop of a hat now, but those discussions are going to start pretty much immediately, because Louisville's going to have to get to work in the postseason to start building the roster for next year, because it's going to have to look a lot different. I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me about this team, I was doing some research this week. Louisville has an ERA of 6.63 right now. Team ERA. Worst that I could find since Roger and Dan have been here. That is the 4th worst ERA of all Power 5 schools. The only teams that are behind Louisville in ERA are Baylor, Northwestern, and Penn State. So the fact that we're talking about this team attempting to make a tournament, I think is a testament to what the offense has done, right? Because when you've got an ERA that only three Power Five schools are worse than you, your offense is obviously doing something right, or you wouldn't even be in the discussion to get in the field. So when you talk about changes to the pitching staff and to the pitching approach from the program, you're spot on, because something has to change, because we can't continue with these numbers. The 195th best ERA in the country out of 290 some odd teams. That's not okay. That's not Louisville baseball. That's not what Dan McDonald's here for. That's not what he preaches. And same with Roger Williams. I mean, we're talking about two guys that have put 5 teams in the College World Series. They know what winning baseball looks like. And we either got to find it or find ways to change. So that's where we are.
100% agree. So let's I feel like we could sit here for hours and continue to discuss this. But let's move on to a little preview for the Notre Dame series this coming weekend. So Notre Dame comes into action sitting at 27-22 overall with a 9-18 record in the ACC with an RPI of 60. Notre Dame's coming off of a very weird weekend series win over Toledo, and weird in the sense that it's odd that they're playing a MAC school in the middle of conference play, but they took 2-3 over Toledo. And their last ACC series a couple weeks ago was a series win over Pitt, where they also took 2 of 3. Notre Dame has a lot on the line this weekend too. They're fighting to just make the ACC tournament, and as of right now they are in. But you have Boston College and Pitt that are right on their heels, and a bad weekend from the Irish could lead to them finding themselves on the outside of the ACC tournament, which is just very odd to think about. How far they've fallen since Link Jarrett left for Florida State, but that's kind of the state of the Notre Dame baseball program. But they have been playing some pretty good baseball as of late. They've seemed like they're starting to put it together a little bit. This is a team that is dangerous. They've got nothing to lose. They're going to come out here and try to ruin any hope that Louisville has uh for from doing anything, because Notre Dame, while they might be in the ACC tournament projections right now, they don't really have a chance at the field of 64. So they're extremely well rested. They're going to come out and going to give us a hell of a fight this weekend at Jim Patterson.
Yeah, you bring up a couple good points about Notre Dame. One, the Toledo series, which is odd. Two, their midweek also got canceled this week against Butler. So, like Louisville, they're both going to be well rested from not having a midweek game, which helps. And additionally, I think this is just a good discussion. Do you think it's who has more at stake and has more motivation to play better this weekend? Louisville trying to find themselves and get into the NCAA tournament, or Notre Dame having to prove themselves this weekend to get a berth in the ACC tournament to try to play for an ACC or the NCAA tournament? What's more at stake for which team?
I'm going to take Louisville here because, Link Jarrett's been gone a couple years now from Notre Dame. It seems like the Irish have kind of just been floundering a little bit, trying to get their feet under them for the new coaching regime. There's obviously there is something on the line. You want to play for the opportunity to go to the ACC tourney, but for Louisville, who has such a storied history over the last 15 to 20 years, the coaching staff has been in place for a while, trying to avoid missing out on the field of 64 in 3 of the last 4 seasons. I think that there's a lot more at stake, and I think that there could be changes after the season if Louisville does end up missing that field of 64. So I'm going to take Louisville here.
One thing that kind of sticks out to me, Notre Dame, you talked about how they're 9-18 in conference play. Louisville's 13-14, so Louisville's a couple games ahead of them. Louisville also has 2 more wins total on their record at 29-22 versus 27-22. And then when you look at their quality wins, Notre Dame is 3-16 versus quad one and quad two teams. 3-16. That's it. So they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, and then they're losing to everyone that's good. Where on the flip side of that, Louisville is 12-18 against quad one and quad two teams. So Louisville has quite a few more wins. But all that to be said, Louisville's ranked one spot behind Notre Dame in RPI at 61, where Notre Dame is currently 60. So I think what you said is pretty spot on. I think Louisville has a lot more to play for. Obviously, getting to the big tournament is more important than the ACC tournament, but you've got to get to the ACC tournament before you can make the big dance. So I think there's a big opportunity ahead for Louisville. They've got this. I mean, they have to win this series. If Louisville loses this series, they have to win the conference tournament to get in to the NCAA tournament. If you lose this weekend, that's it. And we're probably going to find out what the weekend is going to look like on Thursday, because the schedule has been adjusted due to weather that's expected in the area. So Louisville is actually going to play a double header on Thursday, 2:00 and 6:00. And then they are going to play the finale on Friday at 6. So I think there is a big opportunity for Louisville, but if they're going to find themselves improving their resume, it starts on Thursday. They've already released starters for this weekend for the 2 Thursday games. You've got Gongora going on Thursday in the first game, and then you've got Webster going in the second game on Thursday, which has kind of been what we've done all year long. The finale is currently TBA, so that's been Colton Hartman the past couple weeks, but he struggled this weekend against North Carolina down in Chapel Hill. So I'm curious to see what that looks like for the finale, but I don't know where else you go other than Hartman. What do you think? Who do you look to for the third game to start?
I'd go Colton Hartman too, just because that's who it has been.
Yeah.
I'm not going to yank a freshman after a rough outing. I just think that's pretty killer for the confidence. I would run Hartman back out there.
To me, the only other option is Patrick Forbes, but I think Forbes has looked so good in relief in his past couple appearances, and I think if it comes down to a situation where we need a relief pitcher and we've already used Tucker, where do you go? Where do you get 3, 4, 5, 6 outs? And I think the answer is probably Forbes. So I think burning him as a starter on that Friday, or I'm sorry, on the third game, burning him in that starter, it takes away his ability to come in relief. And if you don't start him, you may be able to use him twice over the weekend. Inning here, inning there. So I think you have to save Forbes for those situations if they arise, and when they do arise, because it's going to come up at some point in time.
Yeah.
So we've talked enough about Notre Dame and North Carolina and where we are, kind of bringing us up to speed with the current team. And I know we are going to flip the script a little bit and talk about your favorite part of the podcast, and that is Cards in the Pros update. I know there's kind of been a lot going on lately. So catch us up to speed on everything going on in your world.
Not my favorite segment tonight, because I got to start it off with news about Brendan McKay. Was absolutely killing it. Thought he was working his way back to Major League Baseball, and he has once again hit an injury, another snag and setback for Brendan. He just landed on the minor league 60-day IL. He has a pronator strain and also a UCL sprain. So he will be out for 6 weeks, no throwing, just doing recovery and rehab without playing any kind of catch, then building back up after that. So hopefully the timetable for him to return to full baseball activity is within 3 months. That's best case scenario. Also, update on Brian Hoeing, who is out with a left hamstring injury. His timetable got pushed back as well for a return, so he's going to be sidelined for the better part of at least the next month or so. So, not a great cards in the pros update tonight. Nothing overly crazy and newsworthy has happened other than a couple injury updates. Feel absolutely terrible for Brendan, and I just know that eventually though he's going to get healthy and everything will click for him because dude's an absolute warrior. He's going to be back. He loves to play, and the fact that he's hung around for this long and continue to work his way back, I don't see anything holding him back from eventually making his return to Major League Baseball.
I hate it for him more than anything because he's got as much talent as anybody that's ever played at the University of Louisville. He was as fun players you'll ever see in a program. I mean, he won how many John Olerud awards, and to see him continue to have injuries and continue to struggle at the major league level, it's just gut wrenching because you've got a guy that he's a good person. He works his ass off to get where he is, and then it just seems like every year it's something. And I think it probably would have been easy just to hang up the spikes a while ago and say, you know what, I'm gonna go do something different. I'm gonna go sell insurance or real estate or whatever it may be. But he just keeps pushing through, keeps rehabbing. And you text me a couple days ago and said McKay was put on the 60-day IL, and I was like, what the hell? Like I hate it for him because he has worked his tail off time and time again. But like you said, he's going to keep putting in that work, and he will be back up in the bigs at some point in time. So hopefully to see him and Hoeing back because both of them, they deserve nothing but playing in the major league because they put the work in time and time again. And Hoeing's been on the podcast before, so shout out to Brian.
Big friend of the pod, Brian Hoeing. But we'll also say this about McKay, a timetable of 3 months puts us, towards the end of the season. We're getting into the dog days of summer where, he eventually is in a spot to come back. I will still say do not be surprised when Brendan McKay makes a return to the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen by the end of the year.
Okay, nice. You heard it here first.
Just gonna put that out there, and don't be surprised when it does happen.
I do want to throw this out there. This is my first Cards in the Pros update I've ever given. Are you ready? I
Let's
saw a
hear it.
video today that Dalton Rushing was catching. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen this, y'all got to go look it up. Batter lays a bunt down, and the ball it's going right down the third base line, and Dalton runs down to the ball and tries to get it down on all fours, and he's trying to blow it in foul territory. It doesn't work. It looks like it kind of bounces off him or his face mask or something, and it stays fair. So, but you've got to go watch it. It's funny. Somebody did it years and years and years ago, and the announcers were given Dalton grief, but it's pretty funny. If you haven't found it, look it up on Twitter. We'll retweet it out there so you can find it. But just that, I think that we've had Dalton on here before, and I think that just kind of shows his personality and who he is and how he plays baseball.
Shameless plug, you can go find that video on the Louisville Baseball Alumni Report. Tweeted that out earlier, and as soon as I saw it, just had to get it out there. I thought it was one of the funnier things I'd seen in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, Dalton's funny. So to see his personality kind of coming out between the lines, it's good to see that he's having some fun out there. So speaking of shameless plugs, this is kind of that time of the podcast where we're gonna wrap everything up. But like you said, you put this stuff out there all the time. You're covering Cards in the Pros. It's a full-time job for you. So where can they find all that information and catch up with everything going on your way?
Yep, you can go follow the Cards and the Pros at the Louisville Baseball Alumni Report on Twitter.
And you can find us on Twitter at Third Central Pod. And you can find me personally on Twitter at Matt Sefcovic and on Card Chronicle. We will be back next week after the Notre Dame series to talk about some ACC tournament baseball. Will carry us through the selection show and everything that goes on, and even beyond that into the summer. We're gonna kind of see where these last couple weeks take us and what the summer is going to look like for Louisville baseball. We'll be here every step of the way, keep you all updated and everything that is going on. Make sure you make it out to the ballpark this weekend if you can. Doubleheader on Thursday, and then out to the finale and watch Louisville hopefully take this series against Notre Dame and then beyond in the ACC tournament. So in the words of Sean Moth, we will see you at the ballpark.